open forum. Are there any, we have nobody signed up. Is there anybody come in late outside? Doug, Tom, do you have any response to previous open forum questions?
No.
Okay, first item, the first reading of bylaws, Article 7, has to do with association officers, management qualifications, powers, and duties. The only change is to make the appointment of corporation officers, move it from June to January.
This change would, for newly elected board members, this change would allow the newly elected board members to get to know the corporate officers before they get elected or reappointed in January. Because right now, if you come on to the board in June and then the vote is taken in June, you may not have any experience with any of the corporate officers. So this would give those individuals several months to get to know them and feel comfortable making their vote. It is required that we do it at least once a year. Really doesn't matter what month, as long as we do it once a year.
Okay, I don't see anybody looking to make any comments. Second item, the first reading of policy 2.05, regulation of common property, that is hunting regulations. Changes quite a few things about members, guests, common property.
One of the goals of these changes is to focus on making sure that this resource is for our membership and their guests. We get, during the hunting seasons, we get regular calls from individuals that have become aware of non-members hunting on, bow hunting on POA property. And so what we're trying to do is add additional control on this so that it's for our members' use.
Tom, the one question I had down in section 4, hunting, in red it says guests must be accompanied by the sponsoring member to hunt on common property. Does that mean that I can't get my brother-in-law a guest pass and he can go on his own? I have to hunt with him? Is that what this is saying?
Yes, so this was one of the points that was discussed. In most cases, a guest with a guest pass can go to the beach, can go to the gym without their sponsor in attendance. On this one, we felt that it was important to have the member in attendance simply because I think it adds a little additional amount of control over the situation in case we had a very generous member giving a lot of people guest passes and having no intention of hunting with them. So it would be one of the few, if you want to call it an amenity or activities that we do require the member to be in attendance. We're trying to make sure that this is for our membership, this resource. Hence why we added that.
Okay. And that's policy 2.05.
That is correct. And all of these policies that are proposed are available for review on our website.
As always, they can be looked at.
And I also wanted to mention, I probably should have mentioned this at the very beginning, Doug is unfortunately at a court hearing. He's in his office. The court hearing is being done via Zoom, so he may be either late or not be able to attend at all of today's meeting.
Okay, that's 2.05. Next one would be considered a first reading, policy 9.04, board election and political candidates / use of facilities. The change in this one indicates that members of the senior staff or the board, neither one, will endorse candidates running for the board. And that's what the change is. So, Sandy?
So it previously said management. I'm not quite sure that changing it to senior staff is really accomplishing much of a change, other than, I guess, somebody who's a supervisor, like at a rec center, wouldn't be considered senior staff and could in fact endorse a member and could potentially have a conflict of interest.
Well, I think when we talked about this previously, we talked about senior staff, and the phrases in there, while conducting association business, a large percentage, way more than half of our employees are in fact members. And when they're not working, we felt that they should be able to have an opinion. And while they're working, though, we don't do campaigning or anything like that while we're working. So off-duty hours, I guess they're allowed to have an opinion.
I also believe that this change is incomplete because, as the previous chair of the board indicated, we should be adding the word volunteer to this policy change also. I know this last election, I received not one but 3 emails that were sent out from committee members, and whether the emails came directly from the POA or whether the members provided their email when they joined a committee, I think to have a fair election, they should not be using those emails for election purposes. They should be using the emails for the committee work. So I'd like to make a motion that we amend it to add the word volunteer.
I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. Everybody up here, volunteers especially, are hard enough to get to work to begin with. Would you agree with that?
We had six people willing to volunteer last time. I don't know that it's hard.
Well, 6 out of 49,000, pretty hard. But I don't want to inflict First Amendment rights violations against anybody that has their own opinion, and they're not in the line of the duty. The email from a POA, yes, but not their own.
Restricting volunteers who are giving their time free and clear to help our POA, there's no reason to be.
Chris, we can hear Tia talking in the other room, but we can't hear her here.
Let me start over. When somebody gives their time free and clear to volunteer for the POA, in no way should we be restricting their freedoms of being able to say and support whatever they want. Just because it's a board election, they are members, they have their opinions, and they should be willing to say it. We cannot get into a legal battle of telling what volunteers can and cannot do.
Anybody else?
I'm a little confused. The way it's worded now, the restriction is limited to board members and senior staff while they are working. We're not talking about a supervisor at a rec center, right or wrong?
That's correct. So a couple points. First of all, it says board, so it doesn't say board members. So the board as a whole could not endorse a specific candidate or set of candidates. an individual, so this was the conversation that took place at the Rules and Regulations Committee, was
Right.
can an individual, you know, if a board member is approached and they can say, according to how it's written right now, they could say, well, I personally am voting for this candidate, but they can't speak on behalf of the board. With regards to senior staff, yeah, I mean, yeah, if a member walked up to a pool supervisor and asked their opinion, the way it is written right now, that pool supervisor could state their opinion while at work.
Do
But
we
if-
need to describe who senior staff is then?
We could rephrase it to directors and department heads, because that's what senior staff is.
Okay.
But we could modify it to directors and department heads.
I'm always a fan of salaried members of management.
Say that again, Tia.
I'm always a fan of salaried members of management. It's easy to understand.
I'm going to make a suggestion here that we're not going to vote on this today. I know you made a motion, you seconded it, but we do not vote during the work session on something like this, so we're not going to amend it today. I'm going to put up for consideration that next Thursday we table it and send it back to Rules and Regulations to hash it out. I'd consider doing that next week. Have
Actually, David-
a little more extensive conversation on the issue. So that's what I'd like to suggest. Apparently, there's still quite a bit of uncertainty about what we really want to do and what actually is done. So that's what I'm going to suggest.
I don't think there's uncertainty. I mean, it's just a question of we maybe ought to think about defining more closely what senior staff means. And I certainly don't have an issue with the intent as the way it stands today.
Well, Mary, do you think that should go back to the Rules and Regs to have them hash that out?
I don't think we need to hash it. There's nothing to hash.
I think it just needs to be a motion at the next meeting and change it if it's approved by the rest of the board. Because if it goes back to rules and regs, that's not the full board. Rules and regs has already got it to this point to the board. If there's a motion and a suggestion to change it at our next meeting, I feel like that's how it should be handled.
Okay.
Agreed.
And we'll see what happens next Thursday then. Everybody's aware that there's some things here to be considered, so we'll see what happens next Thursday.
Yeah, I think it would be best to get this worked out next week and vote on it, simply because, you know, the election's right around the corner. I mean, it's not that many months away, and this requires 2 readings, and we want to make sure that this is in effect well before the start of the new board election.
Okay, that's policy 9.04.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Are you saying that no motions are going to be taken during the work session?
We are not going to vote on amending this today because this is a work session. We don't make motions to amend during the work session. Is that correct, Doug, or am I wrong?
You can take up issues in the work session. If it's motioned and seconded, you can discuss it and vote on it. Typically we don't, but that option is open to the board.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Exactly what was the motion?
The motion was to amend the policy change to include the word volunteer as the previous chair suggested.
Who seconded that?
Jerry Hover.
Okay. Thank you.
David?
Where do you intend to insert the word volunteer? Where does it come in this reading?
Neither members of the senior staff, nor the board, nor volunteers shall endorse any candidate running for the board. And if you don't like the word volunteers, committee members.
That is two totally different things. Which one are you wanting?
My concern is committee members who have access to a large number of member emails. Do we have volunteers that are not on committees?
Every day, everywhere.
Okay, then committee members is what my intention is. I believe that's probably what the previous chair's intention was. I did not receive any emails that was not from committee members that were using emails.
Doug, does that present any issues in terms of freedom of speech?
Doug?
Yeah, I'm mulling it over. I don't believe so. As a private entity, you know, you can make reasonable restrictions on people who are volunteering for you.
Okay, then, hearing no further discussion.
I wouldn't have a problem with that if it was somehow, what am I trying to say? If we limited it to their committee member use of emails that were gathered as a result of committee work. But otherwise, I mean, how can we stop a member of the golf JAC when he's out on the golf course playing with his buddies from talking about candidates for the board? I mean, I just don't see that happening. If we want to be specific, and I think, Sandy, you are being specific, but in terms of what we don't want them to do, it's simply we don't want them using emails that they gathered as a result of committee work. So it would either be, you know, committee member emails.
Okay, as the motion to amend that we have before us inserts the words nor volunteers. That's what we're considering right now. If you want to change it to something else, that's down the road. But right now, we're considering adding 2 words.
Okay, well, are we ready to vote on that?
I'm ready to vote on it. All in favor of inserting the 2 words, nor volunteers, after the board, signify by raising your hands or saying aye.
Aye. Mike Abb, aye.
1. Sandy, yes. Jerry?
Before I vote, I have a question on it. You're adding another nor? There's already one nor in there.
No, that nor is not there. That's crossed out.
Man, it sure is not crossed out on my paper.
Yeah, it would be, the grammar wouldn't be correct with 2 nors.
Yeah, if you had 3 parties there, it would not be. You'd have to change nor. So it'd be a listing of people, you know, a listing of groups of people. And I would suggest more tailoring the language to, you know, more specify when you're putting that restriction on volunteers, because, you know, what you're saying is using information they've gathered through the POA, maybe like we have it here, while conducting association business, put that limit on it. Otherwise, just flat out putting nor volunteers is not, you know, wouldn't pass the test for reasonable restriction, I don't think.
Does that answer your question, Jerry?
Well, yeah, but what he's saying is different than what you're saying, adding 2 words, nor volunteers.
The question we have before us right now is nor volunteers. That was the motion.
Well, and we need to vote on it because it was seconded, but we had subsequent conversation. We're gonna change it to committees and possibly add using emails.
Okay, the discussion is over. Jerry, all those in favor, Sandy and Mike? Jerry? Jerry votes yes. All those opposed? David Welchel, Jerry Barron, David Brandenburg, Mary?
Yeah, I'm opposed.
You're opposed? Tia?
Opposed.
Opposed. Okay, the motion fails.
So now I'd like to make a motion that we add the words nor committee members using emails while on association business.
We can't, we would have to, could we amend could we modify your change to get it grammatically correct, because you can't use multiple nors?
I would
Yes.
go back to the suggestion that David made, and with all due respect to Mary, we're trying to hash this out during, so I feel like it should probably be, if someone would be interested in making a motion to send it back to rules and regs, then we can finalize that language. That's what I suggest. There's a lot of changes here that we would have to work out the language, and doing it via motion just makes it really difficult to understand.
Correct, I agree. So I'll make a motion that we send it back to rules and regulations to hash it out.
That's not really the suggestion. The suggestion is to go to the next board meeting with a motion prepared and discuss it and vote on it there. We have a week to work on the wording of what you're wanting with Doug to make sure it's correct, and then motion on it at the next meeting.
That's a possibility as well, if you want to do it that way.
Well, Tia, do you think you can get it through rules and regs before Tuesday?
Thursday.
No, Friday.
Friday.
It would be on the agenda, but we would, if we could get it out to the board at least 48 hours before the meeting, that would be best.
Can we do it via email, or do we have to have a meeting?
You can do it via email. The Rules and Regulations Committee added the first item on the agenda. The Article 7 was discussed and added via email. So the Rules and Regs could do it via email. Although, with that being said, the more complex the issue, the more debating, the harder it is to do it via email.
Correct.
Then, Teal, why don't we do it via Zoom meeting and just schedule it like Monday?
After 5 p.m., absolutely.
Fine with me.
So be it. Okay. End of discussion today on 9:04. Old business. We will do the second reading for bylaws, Article 3. Board of Director qualifications, governing power removal and vacancies. That one was approved on the first reading last month.
I just have one more comment on this. You do realize that you're actually requiring that a board member who's been removed cannot really run for 4 years, because the election process starts in January.
We were to change the wording to say elections as opposed to years, change it to 3 election cycles.
Oh, God, no.
Any change like that would require it to go back to a first reading.
I don't have any problem with it the way it stands. Next item on the agenda will be the second reading of Policy 1.03, Guidelines for Association Committees. That's the removal of a couple of words.
David,
Yes,
can we go back to Sandy's issue?
which issue?
The issue about you're really restricting them for 4 years based on the way it's worded now. And when I think about it, he's right, because the election process cycle starts like in December of this year for next year.
Well,
So somebody could legitimately say, you know, you can't run for 4 years.
It would depend upon when the vote was taken to remove that person. So, yes, that could happen, but it would be determined when the person was removed from the board.
So does nobody else have an issue with that but Sandy and I?
Mary, I agree with Doug. It depended upon where this vote occurred and the removal of that person. It could be late in the year. It could have been January. It could have been February. So that with 3 years would be 3 years. It wouldn't be a 4-year period then. If it occurred in December, if it occurred to the first month, sure, after he got in or whoever it was, and violated some board policy and was removed, then it would be 4 years. But it's kind of a sliding scale, so I think it's fine as it's written.
Anybody else?
I don't like the whole thing in general, so I don't care if it's 3 or 4. I still don't like it.
Okay, on to Policy 103, second reading. This one, as I said, removes the word guidelines and community involvement. I don't think there's any controversy there. Then we have the second reading of a number of policies where the word guideline is removed from these policies. This is something that Jerry Holber brought up. He doesn't like guidelines and policies to be combined. So there they are. The next one, we have a second reading of policies, 5 of them. It's a combination of removing guidelines and replacing it with rules, objectives, procedures, and such not. Just a couple of word changes in each one. The next one, Policy 9.03, Volunteerism. Second reading, guideline has been removed and replaced with procedure, and the word community involvement has been removed from the list of committees. Any comments on that one?
I have some comments. One, I think we really should be doing a background check on all volunteers, especially those that are working with children or the potential to work with children. And I think we should add language to it similar to Article 3, Section 1 of convicted felons, sex offenders. Those types of things cannot become a volunteer.
I think that would be a good suggestion for the rules and regs to take up. I think it would take some time and require Doug to go through and find any places, there may be multiple places where those wordings or cautions could be inserted. So I think that would be a good one for the rules and regs to consider. Would that satisfy you, Jerry, to go ahead and take a look at it?
As long as they will consider that as a change, yes.
Well, in this day and age, I think you have to be aware I think it's a good consideration, and there may be a lot of places where the wording would need to be changed. So, more work for Tia and rules and regs.
Perfectly fine. Gary, I want you to know with your comment just now, if we would consider it, any suggestion you ever bring to us, we will always consider, discuss, and debate. Always.
Okay, and that brings us to announcements. Next Thursday will be the regular monthly session, Thursday, September 24th, 6 p.m., right here in the boardroom. The next GM meeting will be Tuesday. Mark that down, Tuesday. The packet says Thursday, but it really is on Tuesday the 6th at 4 p.m. That is a closed meeting. The next work session will be on Thursday the 15th, 9 a.m. here in the boardroom. That will be the regular time. And the next October regular session will be on the 22nd, Thursday, 6 p.m. here in the boardroom. And just as a note to get ready, November and December, the schedule of meetings is moved up 1 week to make allowances for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So that brings us to a close. Is there anything else? Meeting is adjourned.
Have a great day.